Morning in Austin still wore a faint layer of mist, with the sun hidden behind slow-moving gray clouds. The hum of traffic rose from the streets below, blending with the whisper of wind rustling through the trees lining the main boulevard. Amid the city's cold indifference, Clara Bennett stood still in front of the towering glass building, her heart heavy. Her fingers gripped a crumpled envelope. Inside, a foreclosure notice on the small home she shared with her mother. Reed Properties, the glittering name in real estate, now loomed as the nightmare threatening to dismantle her fragile world. Just 3 weeks ago, she had thought her life, while difficult, was stable. Teaching by day, caring for her ailing mother by night, living in a weathered house filled with memories. But everything crumbled when she discovered the home had been mortgaged by someone from her past, none other than her late father's old friend. Clara had no money, no family, and no choices left. Wearing the only formal dress she owned, hair tied neatly, she stepped into the towering glass building in downtown Austin, where Nathaniel Reed, the infamously cold and calculated CEO, was waiting. Clara stepped into the gleaming reception hall, its transparent glass walls casting reflections of both opulence and chill. The immaculately dressed assistant led her to a private elevator, saying nothing except a polite nod. Clara swallowed hard, her palms slick with sweat, heart pounding against her ribs. When the office doors opened, she saw him. Nathaniel Reed stood with his back to her, gazing out the tall window that overlooked the entire city of Austin. He was tall, broad-shouldered, neatly trimmed brown hair and a gray suit tailored to perfection. The room exuded minimalist coldness. No family photos, no personal touches. "Miss Bennett." His voice was deep, clear, and devoid of emotion. Clara sat across from him, uneasy. "I came to speak about the house." "No need to explain," he interrupted, placing a file on the desk. "I've reviewed your case." She froze as she saw her personal information meticulously arranged in the thick folder, her job as a teacher, income, her mother's medical history. Everything in the hands of this man. "You can't repay the debt," he said bluntly, "but I have an offer." Clara clenched her hands. What kind of offer? Nathaniel looked her straight in the eyes. "Marry me. For 1 year. After that, your debt will be cleared and your mother will receive the best medical care." Silence. Only the sound of wind brushing the glass. "This isn't about love," he continued. "I need a legal wife. You need a way out. It's a transaction." Clara felt the ground vanish beneath her. A loveless marriage. Or lose everything. 3 days after signing the marriage contract, Clara stood before the towering iron gates of the Reed estate. The mansion sat atop a quiet hill on Austin's west side, surrounded by manicured hedges and tall fences. It was a far cry from the weathered little house she had shared with her mother, where birdsong and wildflowers greeted her each morning. The housekeeper, an older woman named Mrs. Alden, opened the door with a polite but distant smile. "Welcome home, Miss Bennett, or should I say, Mrs. Reed." Clara forced a small smile, nerves churning inside her. She stepped into the house. No, the mansion, where cold marble floors echoed beneath her feet, high ceilings loomed overhead, and abstract paintings adorned the walls. Silence filled the air. No voices, no laughter, just an oppressive perfection. "Mr. Reed will return for dinner," Mrs. Alden said as she led Clara to her room, a suite larger than her entire former home. The room held a walk-in closet full of new clothes, a stone-tiled bathroom, and windows overlooking a sparkling pool. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, still gripping the handle of her worn-out bag. She felt like a stranger in this polished, unfamiliar world she had just stepped into. Part of her knew there was no turning back now. On her first night in the mansion, Clara couldn't sleep. Silence draped over the house like a heavy blanket, making every sound echo. Just before midnight, a soft piano melody floated through the hallway. She slipped out of bed, bare feet touching the cool marble, and followed the music like it was tugging at her soul. It wasn't a recording. Someone was playing, live and gentle. The sound led her to a closed door at the far end of the hall. Her heart thudded. This was the room Nathaniel had told her never to enter. But that melody, it pulled her in. She pressed her ear to the door. A child's voice whispered, "One more song, Aunt May." A woman's reply followed gently, "Just one more, Ellie, then it's bedtime." Clara froze. Ellie, a child, in this house. She stepped back, bumping into a small console table. A vase toppled and shattered on the floor. The piano stopped. The door swung open. An older woman with kind eyes stared at Clara. "You are?" the woman asked. "Clara, I'm Nathaniel's wife." A little girl, around 5, peeked out. Big eyes, soft brown curls, but what stole Clara's breath was the ice blue gaze, just like Nathaniel's. "Are you my dad's new wife?" the girl asked. Clara knelt down and smiled gently. "Your name's Ellie, isn't it?" The girl nodded. "Do you like marshmallows?" Clara laughed softly, surprised by the warmth rising in her chest. But when Nathaniel appeared at the end of the hall, eyes blazing, she knew. Everything had just changed. "You weren't supposed to be there," Nathaniel said, voice low and deliberate, as Clara stepped into the library where he stood, facing the darkened window. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop, Clara began, but he raised a hand to stop her. Ellie wasn't part of the contract. Clara clenched her hands. "I didn't know you had a child." A heavy silence settled. At last, Nathaniel exhaled, his voice rough. "Isabel, Ellie's mother, died in a car crash 3 years ago. She called me that night. I chose work over going with her. She drove off angry and—" He stopped, still staring out the window. "After she died, I hid Ellie from the world. The press, the shareholders, the deals, they didn't need to know she existed." Clara stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Ellie needs someone. She needs more than a shadow of a father." Nathaniel turned. The ice in his eyes now carried exhaustion. "You don't understand. I lost someone. I won't risk losing anyone else." Clara looked at him and, for the first time, saw cracks in the armor. He was no longer the cold CEO or the man who handed her a contract, but a father drowning in guilt. "You can't keep Ellie in a glass cage forever," Clara said softly. "She deserves the world, and so do you." Nathaniel didn't respond, but as Clara left the library, she knew something in him had shifted. 3 weeks had passed since Clara met Ellie. The atmosphere in the mansion had shifted, lighter but filled with unspoken silences. Clara slowly adapted to the new rhythm: walks with Ellie in the garden, bedtime stories, occasional breakfasts with Nathaniel. And the way he looked at her now, so different, until Vanessa returned. Clara had never heard the woman's name before, but the moment she walked into the living room and saw Nathaniel chatting warmly with a tall woman, dark chestnut hair, a curve-hugging dress, and a practiced smile, she knew this was someone from his past. "Clara," Nathaniel stood up, "this is Vanessa Knight. She used to be Frost & Sloan's legal advisor." "And his ex-girlfriend," Vanessa added, unfazed. Clara smiled politely, offering a light handshake. "Nice to meet you." "Surprising," Vanessa said, eyes scanning her, "that he married someone like you." Clara held her calm. But something stirred inside, not because Vanessa was beautiful, but because of the way Nathaniel smiled at her. A smile Clara had never seen directed at herself. Vanessa tilted her head, eyes flicking downward. "I'm here with important news. I'm pregnant. It's Nathaniel's child." The words struck Clara like a blow to the chest. Nathaniel froze. "Vanessa, what are you saying?" "I just thought you should know," she shrugged, before continuing this little contract marriage. Clara didn't wait to hear more. She turned and walked away, her heart pounding. Upstairs, alone in her room, Clara stared at her trembling hands. She had no right to be jealous. She was only the temporary wife. But why did it hurt so much? 2 days passed, and Clara kept her distance. She avoided Nathaniel's eyes, avoided the quiet evenings in the library where they used to sit close in a silence that once felt comforting. The doubt about Vanessa's pregnancy pierced her like a thorn buried deep. That evening, Nathaniel entered the living room, holding a stack of papers. "Vanessa lied," he said directly. "I just got the report from my private physician. She was never pregnant." Clara looked up, stunned. But before she could respond, he stepped closer. "You believed her, even for a second?" "I just didn't know if I had the right to question it," Clara whispered. "I'm only the wife in a contract." Nathaniel was silent for a moment, then lowered his voice. "Then let me erase that part." Before Clara could react, he leaned in and kissed her. Not rushed, not forced. It was a gentle, earnest kiss, filled with everything left unsaid between them. When they parted, Clara whispered, "So this is real?" "It's real," he replied, resting a hand on her cheek. "I finally see what I want." Since that kiss, no words of love had been exchanged, but everything had changed. Nathaniel was softer. Claire was no longer just a guest in the mansion. She was part of the rhythm of this place, especially with Ellie. One afternoon, Ellie burst into Clara's room, clutching a thick book, eyes sparkling with excitement. "Miss Clara, can you read this to me? Daddy's always too busy." Clara smiled, pulling the girl onto her lap. "Of course, little princess." They read beneath the soft sunlight filtering through the window. Ellie giggled as Clara changed her voice for each character, her small hand tightly holding Clara's. "Miss Clara?" Ellie looked up, her voice uncertain. "Are you going to stay forever?" Clara froze. The simplicity of the question tightened something deep in her chest. I'll try to stay if you want me to," she whispered, brushing Ellie's hair. "I do," Ellie nodded firmly. "I like you more than cinnamon rolls." The words made Clara laugh, really laugh, without holding back. That night, Nathaniel stood silently by the door, listening to Clara's storytelling, Ellie's giggles echoing through the halls, and he knew this house had changed. Because of a woman he no longer wanted to let go. A sudden downpour struck as Clara read to Ellie in the living room. Nathaniel entered, his hair damp from the rain, but his eyes held something different, something deeper. "Clara," he said softly, "come with me." She hesitated but followed. Nathaniel led her to the glass house behind the mansion, roses drooping under the rain, their scent rich in the air. "I used to think needing someone made me weak," he began, voice raw. "But losing you would break me. You've changed everything." Clara stood still, rain trickling down her face. Or were they tears? Nathaniel knelt, pulling a small black velvet box from his pocket. No contract, no conditions, no expiration, just you, me, and Ellie. "Clara Hayes, will you marry me?" She brought her hand to her lips, overcome. Her heart cracked open after all the restraint. "I thought you didn't believe in love," she whispered. "I don't, but I believe in you." She laughed through tears, nodding, "Yes, I will." The wedding took place on a quiet autumn afternoon in the small garden behind the mansion, where Clara and Nathaniel had first dared to acknowledge their feelings. No flashing lights, no press, just a handful of close friends, simple blooms, soft music, and Ellie as the flower girl in a white dress and innocent smile. Clara wore a simple silk gown, her hand in Nathaniel's, their eyes finding each other like it was the first time. Clara's mother, Margaret, now recovered, sat in the front row with misty eyes. Seeing her daughter's peaceful smile, she knew she had made the right choice, to trust and let Clara walk her own path. After the ceremony, Nathaniel gently took her hand. "Mrs. Margaret, I'd love for you to come live with us. Ellie would be happier with you around, and Clara would too." She grasped his hand, her gaze soft. "Thank you, son, for giving her a real home." On a crisp winter morning, Clara stood by the window, her hand gently resting on her stomach. Sunlight filtered through the mist, casting a soft glow on her peaceful face. Her breath trembled slightly, but her eyes shone with a joy she couldn't hide. Nathaniel entered carrying 2 cups of hot cocoa. He paused when he saw the strange, glowing smile on her lips. "Is something wrong?" he asked, setting the cups down. Clara turned, took his hand and pressed it to her belly, her eyes glistening. "There's a new heartbeat," she whispered. "Ours." He froze, then pulled her into a tight embrace, speechless. The heart he had once locked away now overflowed with love, worry, and hope. When Ellie heard the news, she jumped with excitement. "I'm going to be a big sister? I'll teach the baby to read and share all my cookies too." Laughter filled the room. In that moment, Clara knew she was no longer the lonely girl burdened by survival. She was a wife, a mother, the heart of a family she'd never dared to dream of. That night, after Clara had fallen asleep holding Ellie close, Nathaniel stepped out alone onto the porch. The sky was filled with stars. No more biting winter wind, just a gentle chill and the faint hum of crickets in the quiet garden. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old sheet of paper. The marriage contract. The cold, calculated words were still there. Now just a faded trace of who he once was. That contract had once been his shield, a way to hide emotions, protect Ellie, and control a life scarred by loss. Then came Clara. Not loud, not demanding, but steady and sincere. She didn't just help him face himself. She taught him how to love. He thought he was buying a role. Instead, he found a home. The next morning, Nathaniel quietly placed the contract into the fireplace. The flames slowly devoured the paper, as if closing a chapter no longer needed. Clara entered, seeing him standing silently. "Do you regret it?" He shook his head, eyes still on the drifting ashes. "No, I'm just letting go of what no longer matters, to begin the rest of my life with you." One soft, golden afternoon, the whole family gathered in the backyard. Ellie ran around with the new puppy they'd adopted, while Clara sat on the garden bench, cradling baby Gabriel, now 6 months old, his bright blue eyes just like his father's. Nathaniel joined her, placing a cup of herbal tea in her hands. He sat beside her, gently wrapping an arm around her shoulders, his gaze resting on the children at play. "Do you think," he asked in a low voice, "we've come a long way?" Clara tilted her head, smiled at him. "Yes, a long, winding road, but worth every step." Ellie came running, kissed her mother's cheek, then climbed onto the bench to hug them both. Gabriel reached out for attention, and they all laughed together. Once, their love had started with a cold contract. Now it lived in every hug, every laugh, and in quiet moments like this. Clara leaned into Nathaniel's shoulder, her heart full of peace. Their family was complete.